wagon wheels groaned against the muddy trail as Nora Callahan pressed her palm against the canvas cover, steadying herself. 3 months had passed since she'd left Montana. 3 months since the cave-in at the Copper King mine had taken James from her. Now, as she watched the Arizona territory stretch before her through sheets of rain, she wondered if running from grief was any different from drowning in it. "Mrs. Callahan, you'd best get back inside," called Silas Hendricks, the wagon master. His beard dripped with rainwater as he rode alongside. "This storm's fixing to get worse before it gets better." She nodded, but didn't move. After weeks of drought, the November rains had come with vengeance, turning the desert into a stranger. Where red dust once choked the air, now brown water rushed through every arroyo and wash. The other families in their party of 12 wagons huddled inside their covers. But Nora couldn't bear the closeness, the smell of damp wool and fear. Lightning split the sky ahead, illuminating the Mogollon Rim like God's own judgment. Thunder followed, so close it shook her bones. Her horse, a steady mare named Clover, shifted nervously in her traces. "Creek crossing coming up," Hendricks shouted over the storm. "Everyone hold tight." Nora had crossed 100 creeks since independence, but when she saw what lay ahead, her breath caught. What the map showed as Willow Creek had transformed into a churning monster of muddy water, carrying full trees like matchsticks. The familiar ford was gone, swallowed by the flood. "We can't cross that," she heard Martha Donnelly cry from the wagon behind hers. "We'll all be killed." Hendricks gathered the men for a hasty conference. Nora watched them gesture and argue, their voices lost in the storm's roar. Finally, Hendricks returned. "We cross one wagon at a time, tie everything down. Women and children stay inside." But Nora had never been one for staying inside. As her wagon lurched toward the water, she climbed onto the driver's bench beside old Charlie Moss, who'd agreed to drive for her after James died. "Get back, Mrs.," Charlie said, his knuckles white on the reins. "I need to see," she said, though what she needed was to feel something besides the numbness that had wrapped around her heart like grave clothes. The first wagon made it across, horses screaming but holding. The second followed. Then it was their turn. Charlie whipped the team forward. The wheels hit water with a shock that nearly threw Nora from her seat. Clover and the other horses plunged deeper, water rising to their chests. The wagon lifted, floating for a terrifying moment before the wheels found purchase again. They were halfway across when it happened. A massive log, torn from some distant mountainside, came spinning down the current like a battering ram. Nora saw it coming, opened her mouth to scream warning, but the impact came too fast. The log struck Clover's hindquarters. The mare screamed and lurched sideways, tangling the traces. The wagon tilted. "Jump!" Charlie roared, but Nora was already falling. The world turned upside down as the wagon rolled. Cold water hit her like a fist, driving all breath from her lungs. Her heavy skirts tangled around her legs as the current seized her, dragging her away from the wagon, from Charlie, from everything solid and safe. She fought to surface, managed one gasping breath before the water pulled her under again. Her wool dress had become an anchor, dragging her down. The current slammed her into a boulder, stars exploding across her vision. She clawed at the rock but couldn't hold on. The river was winning. "This is how I die," she thought with strange clarity. Not of grief in Montana, but drowned in Arizona mud. Something crashed into the water upstream. Through the chaos, she glimpsed a figure diving toward her, not from the wagons, but from the far bank. Strong hands seized her shoulders, hauling her up. She gasped, choked, tried to see her rescuer, but rain and muddy water blinded her. The stranger was swimming now, one arm around her chest, fighting the current with powerful strokes. Nora tried to help, tried to kick, but her waterlogged skirts made movement impossible. She could only cling to the hard arm around her as they battled the flood together. The far bank rushed past. They were being swept downstream, away from the crossing, away from the wagons. Her rescuer changed direction, angling toward a calmer eddy behind a cluster of boulders. Nora's feet touched bottom. Then they were crawling, coughing up brown water. collapsing on a narrow strip of sand beneath an overhang of red rock. For long moments, she could only lie there, retching river water and trying to breathe. Rain hammered the rocks above them, but here they had shelter of a sort. Finally, she pushed wet hair from her eyes and looked at the man who'd saved her. He wasn't a man from the wagon train. The stranger sat with his back against the rock wall, chest heaving, long black hair plastered to his face. His skin was the color of weathered copper, his features sharp and angular. He wore deerskin leggings and a cotton shirt, both soaked through. A knife hung at his belt. He was Indian, Apache, she guessed from the stories she'd heard. Fear shot through her, cold and sharp. She scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. The river raged behind them, cutting off escape. "You're safe," he said in clear English, not moving from his position against the wall. His voice was deep, careful. "I won't hurt you." Nora's heart hammered against her ribs. Everything she'd been told about Apaches crowded her mind. Savage raiders, woman stealers, monsters who tortured captives for sport. But this man had just risked his life to pull her from the flood. "The wagons," she managed through chattering teeth. "I need to get back." He glanced at the river, then back at her. "Not today, maybe not tomorrow. Water's too high." "They'll look for me. In this storm," he shook his head slightly. "They'll count you dead and move on. Safer for them." The brutal truth of it hit her like another cold wave. Wagon trains couldn't afford to wait. Not with winter coming. Not with families to protect. They'd say prayers over her memory and keep moving toward California. "What's your name?" she asked, needing something solid to hold on to. He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing whether to answer. "Taza, I'm Nora." She pulled her knees to her chest, trying to stop shivering. "Nora Callahan, you're cold." It wasn't a question. He rose slowly, careful not to move too quickly. "There's a cave higher up, dry. I have a fire there." Every instinct screamed against following an Apache stranger into the wilderness, but she was soaked through, freezing, and the storm showed no sign of breaking. Pride and prejudice were luxuries she couldn't afford. "All right," she said. He led her up a narrow path she never would have found alone, moving sure-footed despite the rain. The cave wasn't far, just a hollow in the cliff face, but it was dry and warm from a small fire crackling near the entrance. Blankets lay folded against one wall, alongside neat bundles of supplies. "You live here?" she asked. "Sometimes." He added wood to the fire, coaxing it higher. "When the weather turns." She stood dripping near the entrance, uncertain. He pulled a blanket from the pile and held it out to her, then turned his back. "You need to get out of those wet clothes," he said to the wall. "You'll catch fever otherwise." Her face burned despite the cold, but he was right. Her fingers fumbled with buttons and laces, peeling away the sodden layers. She wrapped the blanket tight around herself, then cleared her throat. "Thank you," she said when he turned back. "For the blanket, for saving me." He nodded once and went back to tending the fire. In the better light, she could see him more clearly. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30 winters. Scars marked his arms and chest where his shirt hung open, old wounds that spoke of violence survived. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why save me?" Taza looked up from the fire, his dark eyes unreadable. "You were drowning, but I'm white." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or bitter amusement. "Yes," he said simply. "You are." They sat in silence as the storm raged outside. Nora pulled the blanket tighter, watching this strange man who'd risked everything to save someone his people had every reason to hate. Nothing in her life had prepared her for this moment. Sitting half-naked in a cave with an Apache warrior while her whole world washed away below. "Rest," Taza said finally. "Tomorrow, if the rain stops, I'll help you find your people." "And if they've moved on?" He met her eyes steadily. "Then we'll figure out what comes next." Nora lay down near the fire, exhaustion pulling at her bones. Outside, thunder rolled across the desert like war drums. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about how much had changed in the span of an hour. Tried not to wonder why she felt safer in this cave with a stranger than she'd felt in months. When sleep finally took her, she dreamed of drowning, but in her dream, the hands that pulled her from the water were gentle, and the voice that called her back was speaking words she didn't understand, but somehow knew meant live. Fever came with the dawn. Nora woke to find her body burning despite the cold morning air seeping into the cave. Her limbs felt heavy as stone, and when she tried to sit up, the world tilted sideways. She collapsed back onto the blanket, teeth chattering. "Don't move!" Taza's voice came from somewhere above her. A cool hand touched her forehead, and she heard him curse softly in a language she didn't recognize. "The river water. You swallowed too much." Through her delirium, she felt him moving around the cave, the scrape of pottery, the splash of water. Then he was kneeling beside her, lifting her head gently. "Drink this." The liquid was bitter, burning her throat. She tried to turn away, but his hand was firm. "All of it. It's willow bark and desert sage. It'll break the fever." She forced herself to swallow, then fell back exhausted. Time became fluid. Sometimes she was back in the river, drowning over and over. Sometimes she was in Montana, watching the mine shaft collapse with James still inside. And sometimes she was here, in this strange, quiet cave, with careful hands cooling her burning skin with damp cloth. When true consciousness finally returned, pale sunlight was slanting through the cave mouth. Her fever had broken, leaving her weak but clear-headed. She was wearing her chemise, dry now and covered with 2 blankets. Her dress hung on a wooden frame near the fire. Still damp, Taza sat near the cave entrance, working on something with his knife. When he noticed her watching, he set it aside. "How long?" she asked, her voice rough. 2 days. 2 days. Her stomach dropped. The wagon train would be long gone by now, probably halfway to Tucson. She truly was alone. "You stayed," she said. He shrugged, uncomfortable with what might have been gratitude. "You needed help." She pushed herself to sitting, keeping the blanket wrapped around her. The cave was larger than she'd first realized, extending back into shadows. Dried herbs hung in bundles from the ceiling. Clay pots lined one wall. This wasn't just a temporary shelter. Someone had made a home here. "You live alone?" "Yes." He handed her a cup of water. Regular water this time. "Drink slowly." She obeyed, studying him over the rim. In daylight, without the veil of fever, she could see him more clearly. His face was striking rather than handsome. All sharp angles and deep-set eyes. Those scars she'd noticed before marked not just his arms, but his back too, visible through his shirt. Some were old, silvered with age. Others looked newer, angrier. "Are you Apache?" she asked. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Half, my mother was white." The words hung between them like a confession. "Half-blood. Neither one thing nor the other." She'd heard stories of such children, caught between worlds, welcomed nowhere. "Where is she now?" "Your mother." "Gone." He stood abruptly, moving to check something simmering over the fire. "She left when I was 7 winters. Went back to her own people." Left him. Abandoned a 7-year-old boy because why? Because life among the Apache was too hard. Because her child's copper skin and dark eyes reminded her too much of choices she regretted. "I'm sorry," Nora said softly. He glanced at her, surprised. "Why? You didn't leave me." "No, but—" She struggled for words. "It's still a hurt that deserves acknowledging." Something shifted in his expression, a guardedness easing just slightly. He ladled whatever was in the pot into a wooden bowl and brought it to her. "Rabbit stew," she realized, her stomach clenching with hunger. "Eat," he said. "You need strength." They shared the meal in companionable silence. The stew was simple but good, flavored with herbs she couldn't identify. As she ate, she studied the cave more carefully. Everything was neat, organized. Weapons hung on one wall, a rifle, a bow, several knives. But there were gentler things too. A book, leather-bound and worn. Carved wooden figures lined up on a natural shelf. Horses and birds rendered with delicate skill. You made those? He followed her gaze to the carvings. It passes time. She set down her empty bowl and rose carefully. Still weak, but steadier. The wooden figures were beautiful, captured mid-motion with lifelike grace. She picked up a horse, running her finger along its flowing mane. My husband carved wood, she said. Never this well, though. He made toy soldiers for the children we never had. Your husband is dead. It wasn't a question. 3 months ago, mine accident. She set the horse down gently. I thought coming west would help. New land, new life. Foolish, really. Grief follows wherever you go. Not foolish. His voice was quiet. Sometimes the only way to survive is to keep moving. She turned to find him watching her with those dark, steady eyes. There was understanding there. Recognition of a kindred spirit who knew what it meant to run from pain that couldn't be outrun. Is that why you live out here alone? Surviving? It's simpler alone. He began collecting the empty bowls. No one to disappoint. No one to disappoint you. That's not living, though. That's just existing. Sometimes that's enough. A coyote howled somewhere in the distance, answered by another. The lonely sound echoed through the canyon. Nora shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. You're cold. Taza moved to add wood to the fire. As he leaned forward, his shirt pulled tight, revealing more scars across his ribs. These weren't battle wounds. They were too uniform, too deliberate. Who hurt you? The words escaped before she could stop them. He went very still, then slowly straightened. Does it matter? Yes. Why? She couldn't explain the anger that rose in her at the sight of those marks, the sudden fierce protectiveness for this man who'd saved her life. Because someone should care that it happened. Someone should say it was wrong. He stared at her for a long moment, something raw and vulnerable flickering across his features before the mask slipped back into place. The army wanted information about my father's band. I didn't have any to give. He touched one of the scars absently. They didn't believe me. And your father's people? Thought I'd betrayed them anyway. A half-blood can never be trusted. You see, the white blood will always win out. His smile held no humor. So now I belong nowhere, to no one. It's better this way. Nora moved without thinking, closing the distance between them. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, she placed her palm flat against his chest, feeling his heart beat rapid beneath her hand. Thank you for telling me, she said. He covered her hand with his own, his calloused fingers gentle. For a moment they stood frozen, the touch electric between them. Then he stepped back, letting her hand fall. Your dress should be dry by morning, he said, voice carefully neutral. I'll take you to Fort Buchanan. They can help you get to Tucson. And if I don't want to go to Tucson? The question surprised them both. Nora hadn't meant to say it, hadn't even realized she was thinking it until the words emerged. You can't stay here. Taza said, Why not? Because you're white, because I'm Apache, because the world doesn't work that way. The world tried to drown me 3 days ago. Maybe I don't care how it works anymore. He turned away, but not before she saw something flare in his eyes, hope or fear or maybe both. Rest, he said. You're still weak from the fever. You're not thinking clearly. But as Nora settled back onto the blankets, she'd never felt clearer. Out there, beyond this cave, waited a world that would judge them both, condemn them both. A world where she was supposed to fear him and he was supposed to hate her. A world where her grief would follow her to Tucson, to California, to the ends of the earth. Here, in this simple cave with its careful organization and patient silence. She'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Not love. It was far too early for that word. But possibility. The chance to be more than a grieving widow. The chance to choose her own path. Thunder rumbled in the distance, promising more rain. She closed her eyes and listened to Taza moving about the cave, tending the fire, settling in for another night of watching over her. Tomorrow he would try to take her to the fort. Tomorrow she would have to decide if she would let him. But tonight, she was safe. Tonight, she was seen. Tonight, she wasn't alone. And for now, that was enough. The morning came too soon, bringing with it the decision Nora had wrestled with all night. Her dress was dry, stiff with mud but wearable. She pulled it on slowly, her fingers fumbling with buttons as Taza prepared for their journey. "Fort Buchanan is 2 days' walk," he said, not looking at her. "We'll need to move carefully. The floods have brought out the wolves, and there are worse things than animals in these mountains." "Worse things? Comancheros, scalp hunters, men who've forgotten their men." He checked his rifle, then strapped a water gourd to his belt. "Stay close to me." They left the cave as the sun crested the canyon walls. The storm had transformed the landscape. Where dry washes had been, now brown water flowed. Debris littered the usual paths. They picked their way carefully down the hillside, Taza leading with the sureness of someone who knew every rock and route. By midday, Nora's legs were trembling. The fever had left her weaker than she'd realized, and her boots, made for town streets, not rough country, rubbed blisters on her heels. She stumbled on loose shale, crying out as her ankle twisted. Taza was beside her instantly, steadying her. "Let me see." She sat on a boulder while he examined her foot with gentle fingers. The ankle was swelling already, angry red beneath her stocking. "We need to wrap this." He tore a strip from his shirt without hesitation. "Can you walk?" She tried, managing 3 steps before the pain forced her to stop. Without a word, Taza slung his rifle across his back and lifted her into his arms. "I can walk," she protested. "No, you can't." He adjusted his grip, holding her as easily as if she weighed nothing. "Pride is a luxury neither of us can afford out here." She wanted to argue, but couldn't. Instead, she let her head rest against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of sage and smoke that clung to his skin. His heart beat steady beneath her ear as he navigated the treacherous ground. They traveled this way for hours, stopping only when absolutely necessary. As the sun began its descent, Taza carried her across a shallow stream, the cold water soaking through his leggings. On the far bank, he set her down carefully in the shade of a cottonwood. "We'll camp here tonight," he said, already gathering wood for a fire. Nora watched him work, efficient and graceful in his movements. When the fire was crackling, he disappeared into the growing darkness, returning with herbs he'd found growing near the water. He made a poultice for her ankle, his touch careful as he rewrapped it. "Where did you learn healing?" she asked. "My grandmother, my father's mother. She was the one who—" He paused, seeming to weigh his words. "She tried to make me Apache, even with my mixed blood. Taught me the old ways. But it wasn't enough. Nothing could have been enough. I looked too much like her, like my mother." He sat back on his heels. "Every time my father saw me, he saw his weakness, loving a white woman, trusting her." The fire crackled between them. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called. "My husband never loved me," Nora heard herself say. "Oh, he was kind enough, dutiful, but I was just convenient. A pretty Irish girl with no family to object, willing to follow him to Montana." She pulled her knees to her chest. "I used to pretend otherwise, but when he died, I grieved for what should have been, not what was. The truth can be its own kind of death," Taza said quietly. She looked at him across the fire, this man who understood wounds that didn't show. "Is that why you saved me? Because you recognized another ghost?" "Maybe." He added another branch to the fire. "Or maybe I'm just tired of watching things die." Sleep was elusive. Nora dozed fitfully, starting awake at every sound. Once she woke to find Taza sitting guard, rifle across his knees, watching the darkness with predator alertness. Another time, she surfaced from dreams of drowning to find him placing another blanket over her. The second time, she caught his hand. "You don't have to take me to the fort." He went still. "Where else would you go?" "I don't know. I don't care. Just not there. Not back to that life." "You don't know what you're saying. The desert isn't kind to anyone. Least of all, a white woman alone. I wouldn't be alone." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Taza pulled his hand free, but gently. "Sleep," he said. "We'll talk in the morning." But morning brought no clarity, only the resumption of their journey. Nora's ankle was better, though still tender. She walked on her own, limping but determined. They followed a deer trail through stands of mesquite and palo verde, the fort drawing ever closer. It was late afternoon when they heard the horses. Taza stopped abruptly, head tilted, listening. Then he was pulling her off the trail, into a cluster of boulders. His hand covered her mouth before she could speak. "4 riders," he whispered against her ear. "Coming fast." They crouched in the shadows as the sound grew louder. Through a gap in the rocks, Nora saw them, rough men on tired horses, rifles glinting in the sun. Their clothes were stained with things she didn't want to identify, and scalps hung from their saddles. Not all the hair was black. One of them reined up near their hiding spot, so close she could smell the stench of him. "Track goes cold here," he called to the others. "That Apache bastard's gotta be close, though, him and whatever white whore he's stolen." Nora's blood turned to ice. They were hunting Taza, hunting them both. "Spread out," another rider ordered. "Check the rocks. Quill, you take the high ground." Taza's hand found hers, squeezing once in warning. Then he was moving, silent as smoke, drawing the hunters away from her position. She watched in terror as he appeared briefly on a ridge above, letting them see him before vanishing again. There! The hunters spurred after him, whooping like demons. Gunshots cracked through the canyon. Nora pressed her fist to her mouth, biting down to keep from screaming. She couldn't see Taza anymore, could only hear the chaos of the chase moving farther away. Then, terrifyingly, the sound stopped. She waited, counting heartbeats, until she couldn't stand it anymore. Ignoring every instinct screaming at her to stay hidden, she crept from the rocks. Her ankle protested, but she pushed through the pain, following the trail of broken branches and disturbed earth. She found them at the base of a cliff, 3 of the hunters standing over a still form. Her heart stopped. "Got him good." One laughed, right through the shoulder. "He ain't going nowhere." Taza lay face down in the dirt, blood spreading beneath him. But he was breathing. She could see his back rising and falling. "Should we finish him quick, or have some fun first?" Another asked. The rage that flooded through Nora was unlike anything she'd ever felt. Without thinking, she picked up a fist-sized rock and threw it as hard as she could. It struck the nearest hunter in the head with a wet crack. He dropped like a felled tree. The other 2 spun toward her, but Taza was already moving. Despite his wound, he rolled and swept the legs of one man, bringing him down hard. They grappled in the dust while the 3rd hunter raised his rifle toward Nora. The shot, when it came, was deafening. But it wasn't the hunter who'd fired. The 4th man, the one who'd taken the high ground, tumbled from the cliff above. Taza's thrown knife buried in his chest. The remaining hunter, seeing the odds change, scrambled for his horse. Taza tried to rise, to stop him, but collapsed back with a groan. The man galloped away, leaving his dead companions behind. Nora ran to Taza, dropping to her knees beside him. Blood soaked through his shirt, spreading with each heartbeat. "Let me see," she said, her hands shaking as she tore the fabric away from the wound. The bullet had taken him high in the shoulder, missing the lung but leaving a hole that bled freely. She pressed her wadded petticoat against it, leaning all her weight down to slow the bleeding. "You threw a rock," he managed, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "At a man with a gun." "You were hurt," she said, as if that explained everything. And perhaps it did. "The one who ran, he'll bring others." "Then we'd better move." She helped him sit up, both of them breathing hard. "Can you ride?" He looked at the hunter's horses, still milling nervously nearby. "If you help me up." It took both of them to get him mounted, Nora's ankles screaming with each movement. She swung up behind him, reaching around to take the reins. His body swayed against hers, fevered already from blood loss. "Which way?" she asked. "Not the fort," he said, words slurring. "They'll look there. Miguel's trading post. Northwest. He'll help." She turned the horse northwest, praying she could find this Miguel before Taza bled out or the hunters found them again. Behind them, vultures were already circling over the bodies they left behind. As they rode into the gathering darkness, Taza's hand covered hers on the reins. His grip was weak but steady. "Nora," he whispered, "save your strength. No, need to say, I'm sorry for bringing danger to you." She pressed her face against his back, feeling his blood warm on her cheek. "I chose this," she said fiercely. "I chose you. Don't you dare die on me now." His fingers tightened briefly on hers. A promise. Maybe, or just the last stubborn grip of a man who'd forgotten how to give up. She kicked the horse to a faster pace, chasing the dying light across the desert floor. Somewhere ahead lay safety, if they could reach it. Somewhere behind. Death followed on horseback, but here, now, they were alive. Bloodied and hunted, perhaps, but alive and together. For tonight, that would have to be enough. The sun was high and merciless when the riders found them. Nora had been walking alongside the stolen horse for the past hour, leading it through a narrow wash while Taza slumped forward in the saddle, barely conscious. The bandage she'd fashioned from her torn petticoat was soaked through with blood. They'd traveled through the night, stopping only when Taza's fevered rambling grew too loud, might attract predators or worse. She heard them before she saw them, the jingle of spurs, the creak of leather, voices carrying on the still air. Her heart seized. There was nowhere to hide in this exposed gulch. No cover but scraggly creosote bushes. Well, what have we here? 3 riders blocked their path. The man who spoke was tall and lean, with pale eyes that reminded her of a rattlesnake. She recognized him from the wagon train. Samuel Morrison, who'd tried to court her after James died, who'd grown angry when she'd refused his advances. "Mrs. Callahan." He touched his hat brim in mock courtesy. "We thought you drowned. Imagine our surprise to hear you were alive, riding with a savage." The other 2 men spread out, flanking them. One she knew, Joe Hutchins from the wagon train. The other was a stranger, hard-faced and cold-eyed. "He saved my life," Nora said, keeping her voice steady. "He's injured. We need help." Morrison's eyes traveled over Taza's slumped form, taking in the blood, the Apache features. His lips curled. Looks like somebody already gave him what he deserved. "Question is, what exactly has he done to you?" "Nothing. He's done nothing but help me. 4 days alone with an Apache buck, and he's done nothing?" Morrison swung down from his horse, approaching slowly. "Now, that doesn't sound likely, does it, boys?" "Please." She stepped between Morrison and the horse. "He needs a doctor. Only doctor he needs is Dr. Hemp." Morrison grabbed her arm, yanking her aside. "String him up, boys. We'll take Mrs. Callahan back to civilization where she belongs." "No!" Nora wrenched free, but Joe had already pulled Taza from the saddle. The wounded man hit the ground hard, a groan escaping his lips. "He's half conscious," Joe said uncertainly. "Sam, maybe we should..." "Should what? Let him live so he can steal another white woman?" Morrison pulled rope from his saddlebag. "You see them scalps on his belt? This animal's a killer." Nora looked and saw what Morrison meant. 2 scalps did hang from Taza's belt, but she recognized the hair. It belonged to the hunters who'd tried to kill them yesterday. She opened her mouth to explain, then closed it. These men wouldn't listen, wouldn't care about self-defense. "I won't let you do this," she said instead. Morrison backhanded her casually, sending her sprawling in the dirt. "You don't get a say, woman, not anymore. Lying with savages costs you that right." She tasted blood, felt rage rise like bile in her throat. As Morrison bent to loop the rope around Taza's neck, she made her choice. "I wasn't taken," she said loudly. "I went willingly. I chose him." All 3 men froze. Morrison turned slowly, his face darkening. "What did you say? You heard me?" She pushed to her feet, lifting her chin. "He didn't steal me. I chose to stay with him. I chose to lie with him. And I'd choose it again." The words hung in the desert air like a challenge. Joe's mouth fell open. The stranger spat in the dust. Morrison's hand went to his gun. "Indian-loving whore," he snarled. "You're worse than him. At least he's just an animal following instinct. You're an abomination." "Then we're well matched," she said, moving to stand over Taza's semi-conscious form. "And if you hang him, you'll have to hang me too. That can be arranged." The stranger spoke for the first time, but Joe grabbed Morrison's arm. "Sam, we can't. She's a white woman. The law—" "The law doesn't protect race traitors." But Morrison hesitated, calculating. Killing an Apache was one thing. Killing a white woman, even a fallen one, was another. There would be questions, investigations. "Here's what's going to happen," he said finally. "You're coming with us, Mrs. Callahan, back to the fort, where decent folks can decide what to do with you. The Apache dies here." "No, it's not a request." He nodded to the other men. "Tie her up if you have to." As they moved toward her, Taza's hand closed around her ankle. She looked down to find his eyes open, aware despite the fever. He gave the slightest shake of his head. "Don't fight. Let them take you. Live." But she was done with that kind of living. "You want to know what he did to me?" she said, her voice carrying clear and strong. "He showed me kindness when your decent folks would have left me to drown. He fed me when I was hungry, warmed me when I was cold. He risked his life fighting off the real savages, white men who collect scalps for bounty, who would have done things to me that would make your worst nightmares seem like church picnics." She knelt beside Taza, taking his hand in full view of them all. "And yes, I lay with him, willingly, gratefully, because he sees me as a person, not property, because he touches me like I'm precious, not like I'm owed to him." Morrison made a sound of disgust. "Enough. Joe, get her on a horse. We're leaving." "What about him?" the stranger asked, gesturing at Taza with his rifle. Morrison considered, then smiled coldly. "Leave him. Let the desert take him slow. It's more than he deserves." They bound her hands and lifted her onto Joe's horse. As they prepared to ride out, she twisted to look back at Taza. He'd pushed himself up on one elbow, watching her with eyes that burned dark as coals. "I'll find you," she called to him in the Apache words he'd taught her during their night ride. Simple phrases, but she hoped he understood. "I'll come back." Morrison slapped the horse's rump, sending it forward. "You'll do no such thing. By the time we're done with you, you'll wish you drowned in that river." They rode hard through the afternoon heat, stopping only to water the horses. Nora's wrists were raw from the rope, her body aching from the pace. But worse than the physical pain was not knowing if Taza still lived, if he could somehow survive his wounds alone in the desert. As the sun began to sink, Morrison called a halt in a grove of cottonwoods. They made camp with efficient practice, hobbling the horses and building a small fire. Nora was tied to a tree, given water but no food. "Trying to decide what story to tell?" she asked when Morrison approached her later. "How you heroically rescued me from the savage Apache." He backhanded her again, harder this time. "You'll keep that mouth shut if you know what's good for you." But she was past caring what was good for her. "Or what? You'll ruin my reputation? Tell everyone I'm a woman of loose morals? I already told you the truth. I chose him. I'll shout it from the rooftops if I have to. Then you'll hang beside him." Morrison said, "Judge Harrington at Fort Buchanan doesn't take kindly to race mixing. He'll see you both swing." "Samuel," Joe approached nervously, "maybe we should think about this. If she wants to ruin herself, that's her business. We found her. She's alive. Isn't that enough?" "Nothing's enough until that Apache pays for putting his hands on a white woman." Morrison's eyes glittered with something that went beyond outrage. Jealousy. Nora realized. He'd wanted her for himself, and the thought that she'd chosen an Apache over him was unbearable. "Even if she asked him to?" Joe persisted. Morrison rounded on the younger man. No decent woman would ask for that. She's obviously been corrupted, her mind twisted. It's our duty to see justice done. That night, Nora lay sleepless under the cold stars. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Taza bleeding in the dust. Had he found shelter? Had infection already set in? The not knowing was agony. Near dawn, she woke to movement in the camp. The stranger was saddling his horse quietly, preparing to leave. "Where you going, Dobbs?" Morrison asked, emerging from his bedroll. "Back to collect that bounty." Dobbs said, "That Apache's got a price on his head, $50, dead or alive. I aim to collect. He's probably dead already. Then he'll be easy to find." Dobbs swung into the saddle. "I'll catch up by tomorrow night. Save me some of whatever justice you got planned for the woman." He rode out as the sky lightened to gray. Nora's heart sank. Even if Taza had survived the night, he couldn't defend himself against a bounty hunter, not wounded as he was. Morrison and Joe broke camp slowly, in no hurry now that their quarry was secured. As they lifted her onto the horse again, Nora made a decision. She couldn't save Taza, not tied up, not with armed men watching her, but she could make sure his sacrifice wasn't wasted. She could survive, and when the chance came, and it would come, she'd make sure of it. She'd find a way back to him. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Callahan?" Morrison asked mockingly. "I am home," she said, looking back toward the desert where she'd left her heart bleeding in the dust. "You're just too blind to see it." The canyon pass loomed before them like a gateway to another world. Sheer red walls rose on either side, narrowing to a passage barely wide enough for 2 horses abreast. Shadows pooled deep and cool at its base, promising relief from the hammering sun. "We'll rest here," Morrison declared, though it was only midday. "Water the horses before we push through." Nora watched him carefully. Something had changed in his demeanor over the past hour, a nervous energy. His eyes darting to the canyon walls. Joe noticed it too. "Sam, maybe we should go around. This pass has a bad reputation." "We're going through," Morrison snapped. "Unless you want to add 3 days to our journey?" They dismounted near a small spring that trickled from the rocks. Morrison kept Nora's hands tied but allowed her to drink. As she knelt by the water, she heard it, a whistle, soft and low, like a canyon wren. But no bird sang in the midday heat. Morrison heard it too. His hand went to his gun. "Joe, watch the woman. I'm going to scout ahead." He disappeared into the canyon mouth. Joe fidgeted with his rifle, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Nora tested her bond subtly. The rope had loosened during the ride, but not enough. Another whistle. "Closer now." Joe spun toward the sound. "Who's there? Show yourself!" His answer came in the form of an arrow that sprouted from his shoulder. He cried out, dropping his rifle. Before Nora could react, figures materialized from the rocks. Apache warriors, faces painted for war. But these weren't Taza's people. Their leader, a scarred man with cruel eyes, looked her over dismissively before barking orders in Apache. 2 warriors grabbed Joe, who was moaning over his wounded shoulder. Another cut Nora's bonds. Morrison came running back at the sound of Joe's cry, but skidded to a halt when he saw the Apaches. "Now hold on!" The leader said something sharp. One of his men struck Morrison with a war club, dropping him to his knees. "You speak English?" Nora asked the leader. He turned those cruel eyes on her. "You are the white woman who rides with Taza Redhawk?" Her heart leaped. He knew Taza. "Yes, is he—" "Taza is hunted dog, half-blood traitor," he spat. "But he has something we want. You will bring him to us." "I don't understand." "Simple. Taza knows location of Army gold shipment, hidden after raid. We want gold. You bring Taza. We trade. You're white men for him." Nora's mind raced. This man wanted to use her as bait, but it also meant Taza might still be alive, if she could find him. "He was wounded," she said. "He might be dead. Then you bring his body. We make sure." The leader gestured to his men, who began tying Morrison and Joe more securely. "You have 2 days. Come back to this pass. Bring Taza, or watch these men die slowly. I don't even know where he is." "Trading post of Miguel Reyes, northwest. Half-blood always runs there when wounded. He pulled a knife, holding it to Morrison's throat. 2 days. No, Taza. These men feed the vultures. You run to soldiers. Same thing. We have watchers. They gave her one of the horses and basic supplies. As she mounted, Morrison found his voice. Don't do it. Don't make deals with these savages. The leader kicked him silent. Go, he told Nora. Time runs short. She rode out of the canyon, her mind churning. Find Taza and betray him to save Morrison and Joe? The thought made her sick, but if she didn't return, the Apaches would kill them, slowly, from the leader's tone. Could she have their deaths on her conscience? The sun was sinking when she finally spotted the trading post, a low adobe building with smoke rising from its chimney. Horses stood in a rough corral. Her heart hammered as she approached. An old Mexican man emerged, shotgun in hand. Closed for business, Senora. I'm looking for someone. Taza Redhawk. Is he here? The man's eyes narrowed. You are the white woman? The one he speaks of in his fever? He's alive? She nearly fell from the horse in relief. Please, I need to see him. Miguel, for this had to be Miguel, studied her for a long moment. Then he lowered the shotgun. Come, but know this. If you bring trouble to my house, you will not leave it. Inside, the trading post was dim and cluttered. Miguel led her through to a back room where a figure lay on a narrow cot. Her breath caught. Taza was alive, but barely. His skin burned with fever, the shoulder wound angry and swollen despite the poultices packed against it. He tossed restlessly, muttering in Apache. The bullet, I removed it, Miguel said, but infection came fast. He fights it, but... He shrugged eloquently. Nora knelt beside the cot, taking Taza's hand. His eyes fluttered open, struggling to focus. Nora. His voice was hoarse, disbelieving. You're safe? I'm here. She smoothed his sweat-soaked hair. I'm here. No, they took you. Morrison. I got away. The lie came easily. She couldn't tell him about the Apaches. Not yet. Not when he was so weak. Miguel brought water and clean cloths. As Nora tended to Taza, the old man watched her shrewdly. Strange that you got away from armed men. Stranger still that you found this place so easily. He told me about you, said you'd help. Miguel didn't look convinced, but said nothing more. Through the night, Nora battled Taza's fever. She bathed him with cool water, forced willow bark tea between his lips, changed his bandages. Miguel helped when needed, but mostly left them alone. Near dawn, the fever broke. Taza's breathing eased, his skin cooling. He opened his eyes, truly lucid for the first time. You shouldn't be here, he said. Where else would I be? He touched her face with trembling fingers. I thought I dreamed you. When Morrison took you, I thought... His expression darkened. How did you get away? She looked away, unable to meet his eyes. It doesn't matter. You need to rest. Get stronger. Nora. His grip tightened on her hand. What aren't you telling me? The weight of her dilemma crashed down on her. Tell him the truth. And he'd insist on going to the canyon, wounded, weak, straight into a trap, stay silent, and Morrison and Joe would die. Either choice ended in blood. There's something I need to say first, she said, deflecting. That night, when I said you weren't the man my husband was, I was angry. Wrong. You're worth 10 of him. 100. Nora. No, let me finish. These past days with you, I felt more alive than in all my years of marriage. You see me, truly see me, not as property or prize, but as myself. She pressed his hand to her cheek. I love you. I know it's too soon, too impossible, but I love you anyway. His eyes closed, pain flickering across his features that had nothing to do with his wound. You can't love me. I bring nothing but death. Look what's already happened. I see a man who saved my life, who fought for me, bled for me. She leaned down, her lips close to his. Who made me believe I could choose my own path, even if that path leads to darkness? Then we'll walk it together. He pulled her down for a kiss. gentle despite the passion burning beneath. When they parted, both were breathless. "There's something else," she said, knowing she couldn't delay longer. "Taza, Hoofbeats in the courtyard cut her off. Miguel appeared in the doorway. Shotgun ready. Rider coming. Alone. Through the window. Nora saw him. Dobbs, the bounty hunter. Dust-covered and grim. Her blood turned to ice. "He's looking for you," she told Taza. "There's a bounty." "I know." Taza struggled to sit up. "Miguel, my gun. You can barely stand." Nora protested. "Then I'll face him sitting down." His eyes were hard now, the warrior showing through the wounded man. "I won't die in bed like a dog." Miguel brought his pistol. Taza checked the loads with steady hands, though sweat beaded his forehead from the effort. "Nora, get behind those grain sacks. Whatever happens." "I'm not hiding. Not anymore." She grabbed an iron skillet from the wall. "We face him together or not at all." Despite everything. Taza almost smiled. "My fierce Irish woman. Very well. Together." Outside. Dobbs had dismounted. "Miguel Reyes," he called. "I know you're harboring a wanted man. Send him out, and there's no trouble for you." Miguel appeared in the doorway. "No one here but me and my woman. Senor. Your woman's a redhead? Saw her through the window." Dobbs drew his gun. "Last chance. Old man." Everything happened fast. Dobbs shot. Miguel dove aside. Taza fired through the window, his aim off from weakness. Dobbs rushed the door, and Nora, waiting beside it, brought the skillet down on his head with all her strength. The bounty hunter crumpled like paper. She hit him again to be sure, then kicked his gun away. "Well," Miguel said from the floor, checking himself for holes, "your woman has spirit, Taza." But Taza had collapsed back on the cot, the pistol falling from nerveless fingers. The effort had cost him dearly. "We need to go," Nora said urgently. "There are others, Apache warriors. They have Morrison and Joe, and they want—" She stopped, seeing Miguel's face change. "What warriors? What have you done?" "Woman." So she told them everything. The ambush at Canyon Pass, the scarred leader's ultimatum, 2 days to deliver Taza in exchange for the white men's lives. When she finished, the room was silent but for Taza's labored breathing. "Black Wolf," he said finally. "Has to be. He thinks I know where the army gold is hidden. Do you?" "No, but he won't believe that." He looked at her with eyes full of sorrow. "You should have let them kill me in the desert. Now more will die." "I won't let that happen." She gripped his hand. "There has to be another way. Some trick. The only trick is whether I die there or here." He squeezed her fingers weakly. "But at least I heard you say you love me. Man can die happy knowing that." "You're not dying," she said fiercely. "Not today, not tomorrow, not for many years. We'll find another way." But as she looked at his fevered face, at Miguel's grim expression, at the unconscious bounty hunter who represented all the forces hunting them, she wondered if love could truly conquer the darkness closing in. Time was running out. In less than 2 days, she'd have to make an impossible choice, and whatever she decided, blood would water the desert sand. Dawn came too soon, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. Nora stood in the doorway of the trading post, watching the horizon while behind her, Taza and Miguel made preparations for what was to come. "You're sure about this?" Miguel asked for the 3rd time, checking the loads in his rifle. "No," Taza admitted, strapping on his gun belt with movement still stiff from his wound. "But Black Wolf won't wait, and I won't have innocent blood on my hands." They'd argued through the night, Nora begging him not to go, Miguel proposing increasingly desperate alternatives. But Taza remained firm. He would go to Canyon Pass. He would face Black Wolf. What happened after that was in the hands of fate. "At least take more men," Nora pleaded. "Miguel knows others who would help." "No." Taza caught her hands. "This is my fight, my past coming to collect its due." "Our fight," she corrected fiercely. "Don't you dare try to leave me behind." He smiled, sad and tender. "My brave one, you've already risked too much for me, and I'll risk more before we're through." She pulled him down for a kiss, pouring all her fear and love and determination into it. Together, remember? That's what we promised. When they broke apart, Miguel cleared his throat. If you're done saying goodbye, we should move. Black Wolf gave us 2 days. We've used 1. They tied up Dobbs and left him in the root cellar with water and food. He'd work himself free eventually, but not in time to interfere. The horses stood ready, including a paint mare Miguel insisted Nora take. She's fast and smart. He said, if things go bad, you ride hard and don't look back. Things won't go bad, Nora said with more confidence than she felt. Taza swayed slightly as he mounted, his face gray beneath its copper tone. The fever had broken, but he was far from healed. Still, he sat straight in the saddle, every inch the warrior despite his weakness. They rode in silence as the sun climbed higher. The desert, so brutal in its beauty, seemed to hold its breath. Even the hawks circled without calling, as if sensing the violence to come. As Canyon Pass came into view, Taza reined in. There's something I need to tell you, he said to Nora. About the gold Black Wolf wants. You said you didn't know where it was. I don't, but I know why he thinks I do. He gazed at the canyon walls, remembering. 3 years ago, there was a raid on an army payroll wagon. My father's band was blamed, though they had no part in it. The army came for them anyway, killed most of the warriors, scattered the rest. Your father died fighting, but before he did, he told me something. Said the real raiders were Apache. Yes, but not from any recognized band. Outcasts and renegades, led by a man who'd sell his own mother for gold. His jaw tightened. Black Wolf. Understanding dawned. He was the real raider, and now he can't find where he hid the gold. The soldiers who survived the raid said one Apache got away with knowledge of where the gold was buried. Black Wolf assumes it was me, since I was the only one from that area to survive the army's retaliation. But you weren't even there. No. I was tending my mother's grave, 2 days' ride away. Not that the truth matters to men like Black Wolf. He touched his shoulder, where fresh blood was seeping through the bandage. We need to move. I won't last long in a fight. They approached the canyon slowly, alert for ambush. But Black Wolf was confident. Only 2 sentries watched the entrance, and they made no move to stop them. One whistled, a signal that echoed off the walls. Deep in the canyon, they found them. Morrison and Joe sat tied to a wagon wheel, both showing signs of rough treatment. Morrison's face was swollen, one eye closed. Joe cradled his injured arm. The arrow wound, festering. Black Wolf emerged from the shadows with 6 warriors. Up close, Nora could see how he'd earned his name. Scars covered half his face, as if he'd been mauled by the very creature he was named for. Taza Redhawk, he said in accented English. The half-blood comes to die with honor. Good. Let the white men go. Taza said, your quarrel is with me. First, you tell me where the gold is hidden. I don't know. Black Wolf's scarred face twisted. You lie. The soldiers saw you flee with the maps. The soldiers saw an Apache. Could have been any of your men. My men are dead. Killed in army raid meant for your father. Black Wolf drew his knife. But we can make you remember. Starting with your woman. Taza moved his horse slightly, putting himself between Nora and the renegades. Touch her, and I'll take the location to my grave. You'll take it there anyway, after you've watched her scream. Wait, Nora surprised herself by speaking. What if he truly doesn't know? You'll have killed us all for nothing. Black Wolf's eyes glittered. Then I am no worse off than now. But what if someone else knows? Someone who might trade the information for our lives? You? Black Wolf laughed, an ugly sound. What would a white woman know of Apache secrets? Not me. She took a breath, praying her gamble would work. But Miguel Reyes might. He trades with everyone, hears everything. If anyone knows rumors about hidden gold, it's him. Miguel is old fox. He tells nothing to nobody. He might, to save his friend's life. She gestured to Taza. Send a man to ask him. What do you lose by trying? Black Wolf considered, then barked an order in Apache. One of his men mounted and rode out. We wait, Black Wolf decided. If Miguel knows nothing, you all die. If he has information, he shrugged. Maybe I am merciful. They dismounted, Nora helping Taza down. He was weakening. She could see it in the tremor of his hands, the sweat beading his forehead despite the cool morning. She settled him against a rock. Staying close. What are you planning? He whispered. I don't know, she admitted. Buying time, hoping for a miracle. Morrison, despite his battered state, managed to sneer. Still protecting your savage? I see. Even now, when he's brought death to us all. The only one who brought death is you, Nora shot back. If you hadn't hunted us, hadn't tried to hang him— Enough! Black Wolf snapped. You chatter like magpies. Be silent, or I cut out tongues. Time crawled. The sun climbed higher, baking the canyon floor. Taza leaned against Nora, his breathing shallow. She kept pressure on his wound, feeling the slow seep of blood through the bandage. Stay with me, she murmured. Always, he replied, though his eyes were glazing. Finally, hoofbeats echoed through the canyon. But it wasn't one rider returning, it was three. Miguel rode between two Apache warriors, his weathered face calm. Miguel, Black Wolf called. Your friend's woman says you have information for me. Miguel dismounted carefully, his movements deliberate. Perhaps, but first, I see my friend. Make sure he lives. Black Wolf nodded permission. Miguel knelt beside Taza, checking his wound with the gentle hands. Nora saw him palm something from his medicine bag, a small leather pouch. He needs water, Miguel announced. And shade. The sun kills as surely as bullets. As Miguel tended to Taza, ostensibly giving him water, Nora heard him whisper, When I give the signal, everybody down. He rose, facing Black Wolf. Yes, I know of the gold, not where it is, but who took it. Speak. First, your word. These people go free, all of them, even the white men who are not my friends. My word. Black Wolf leaned forward eagerly. Now tell me, the gold was taken by Mangas Coloradas himself, before he died, hidden in the sacred caves of the Chiricahua. But only his daughter knows the exact place. Miguel paused dramatically. And she will trade the location for one thing only, the head of the Apache dog who betrayed her father to the army, the head of Black Wolf. For a moment, silence. Then Black Wolf roared with rage. Raising his rifle, Miguel threw the leather pouch at the ground. The explosion was small but effective. Flash powder, bright as the sun. In the confusion, Miguel dove, pulling Nora and Taza down. Gunfire erupted from the canyon walls. Miguel's miracle. Riders he'd sent ahead to take position. Black Wolf's men scattered, firing wildly at enemies they couldn't see. Morrison and Joe hugged the ground, still tied, but trying to make themselves small. The horses! Taza gasped. Nora didn't need telling twice. She ran for the paint mare, untying her while bullets whined overhead. Taza tried to stand but collapsed. Without thinking, she grabbed him under the arms, hauling him with strength born of desperation. Go! Miguel shouted, laying down covering fire. Ride! She got Taza onto the mare, swinging up behind him. His head lolled against her shoulder, but he was conscious enough to grip the saddle horn. Morrison and Joe, she started. My men will free them. Go! She kicked the mare hard. The horse leaped forward, carrying them out of the killing ground. Behind them, the battle raged. Miguel's men had the high ground, but Black Wolf's warriors were fierce fighters. Nora rode hard, holding Taza against her, feeling his blood soak through her dress. The mare was everything Miguel had promised. Fast, sure-footed, responsive to the slightest touch. They'd made it perhaps a mile when hoofbeats thundered behind them. She risked a glance back. Black Wolf himself, scarred face twisted with fury, gaining on his powerful stallion. Faster, Taza mumbled. Must go faster. But the mare was carrying two, and one badly wounded. Black Wolf closed the distance, rifle raised. That's when Nora saw it, a narrow defile between two red rocks, barely wide enough for a horse. Without thinking, she yanked the reins. sending the mare plunging through. Black Wolf's first shot sparked off stone inches from her head. The passage twisted, turned, opened suddenly onto a sheer drop. The mare skidded, hooves scrambling at the edge. For one heart-stopping moment, Nora thought they'd go over. Then the horse found purchase, dancing sideways along a narrow ledge. Black Wolf burst from the defile at full gallop. Too fast to stop. His stallion tried to turn, but momentum carried them forward. Horse and rider went over the edge with a single, terrible scream. Nora didn't watch them fall. She guided the mare carefully along the ledge until they found safer ground. Only then did she allow herself to shake. "Is he?" Taza's voice was barely a whisper. She looked back at the drop. "Dead. It's over." "No." He raised his head with effort, meeting her eyes. "Not over. Just beginning." And as she held him, there on that narrow ledge between death and hope, she understood. The killing might be done, but their real struggle was just starting. To live together in a world that wanted them apart. To build something lasting from the ashes of violence. "Then we begin," she said, pressing her lips to his fevered brow. "Together." He smiled, the expression transforming his pain-drawn features. "Together," he agreed. Behind them, smoke rose from Canyon Pass where the last of the battle played out. Ahead, the desert stretched endless and unforgiving. But they were alive, they were free, and they were together. For now, it was enough. The small hunting cabin materialized out of the mesquite like a mirage. Nora nearly wept at the sight. 4 walls and a roof, smoke rising from the chimney. Signs of life in this endless wilderness. The paint mare, sensing journey's end, picked up her pace despite her exhaustion. "Hello, the cabin?" Nora called. Following frontier custom, an old man emerged, rifle in hand but not aimed. His face, weathered as ancient leather, broke into concern when he saw Taza slumped against her. "Ay, Dios," he muttered. "Bring him in, Senora, quickly now." Together they carried Taza inside. The cabin was sparse but clean, a single room with a fireplace, rough-hewn furniture, herbs hanging from the rafters. The old man, he introduced himself as Carlos, helped her lay Taza on a narrow cot. "You are the woman Miguel sent word about," Carlos said, already cutting away Taza's blood-soaked shirt. "He said you might come this way. Miguel survived. See, his message came by rider this morning. The fight at the canyon. Black Wolf dead. Soldiers coming to investigate." He examined the wound with practiced hands. "This is bad, very bad, but I have seen worse survive." For 3 days, Taza hovered between life and death. Carlos proved to be more than just a hunter. He was a curandero, a healer who'd learned from both Mexican and Apache traditions. He packed the wound with moss and herbs, forced bitter teas between Taza's lips, chanted prayers in languages Nora didn't recognize. Nora never left Taza's side. She bathed his fever-hot skin, held his hand through the delirium, whispered promises and pleas and declarations of love. On the second night, when his breathing grew so shallow she could barely see his chest rise, she laid her head on his heart just to feel it beat. "Don't you dare leave me," she whispered fiercely. "Not after everything, not when we're so close to free." On the third dawn, she woke from an exhausted doze to find him watching her. His eyes were clear, focused, alive. "Nora." Her name on his lips was the sweetest sound she'd ever heard. "You're awake." She touched his face, needing to be sure he was real. "How do you feel?" "Like I wrestled a grizzly and lost." He managed a weak smile. "But alive, thanks to you." Carlos appeared with broth and more medicine. "The infection broke. He'll mend now, with time and care." The old man studied them both. Miguel also sent word about what happened at the trading post, about what you are to each other. Nora stiffened, but Carlos raised a peaceful hand. "I judge no one. Love is love, but others will not be so understanding. You know this." "We know," Taza said quietly. "Good. Then you are not fools, just brave." Carlos moved to the door. "I must check my trap lines. Rest, both of you. You are safe here. Over the following weeks, Taza slowly regained his strength. At first, he could barely sit up without help, then stand, then take a few shuffling steps with Nora supporting him. Each small victory felt monumental. In the evenings, by the fire, they talked, really talked, in a way they hadn't had time for during their desperate flight. Taza told her about his childhood, caught between two worlds, about the grandmother who'd tried to make him Apache, the father who'd seen only his white blood, the mother who'd abandoned him. She left a note, he said one night, staring into the flames. Said she loved me but couldn't stay, that this life was killing her. I kept that note for years, until I realized loving someone and staying with them aren't always the same thing. She was wrong, Nora said firmly. Love means staying, especially when it's hard. Is that why you're here? Because it's hard. She moved to sit beside him on the floor, taking his hand. I'm here because nowhere else makes sense anymore. Because when I thought I'd lost you... She swallowed hard. I can't go back to that emptiness. Taza, I won't. He pulled her close, pressing his lips to her hair. You humble me. A woman like you, choosing a man like me. A woman like me. She pulled back to look at him. You mean stubborn, reckless, ruined in the eyes of proper society? Brave, beautiful, free. He touched her face with reverent fingers. My grandfather once told me that the spirits send us our other half, but not always in the form we expect. I think you're mine, Nora Callahan, and you're mine, she whispered, before kissing him with all the love and desire she'd held in check during his recovery. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Taza rested his forehead against hers. When I'm healed, truly healed, I want to make you my wife, in the Apache way, if you'll have me. Yes, no hesitation, no doubt. Yes, I'll have you, in any way, always. But reality intruded, as it always did. The next day, Carlos returned from town with troubling news. Morrison had survived the canyon fight and was spreading word about the depraved white woman who'd chosen a savage over her own kind. There was talk of sending marshals to find them. We can't stay here, Taza said that night. Carlos has risked enough for us. Where will we go? Nora asked, though she already knew there were few places that would welcome them. West, maybe California. I heard there are towns there where mixed couples can live, if they're quiet about it. He looked at her uncertainly. Could you do that? Live quietly? Never quite accepted, but not actively hunted? I could live anywhere with you, she said simply. But is that what you want? Always hiding who we are? What I want is you safe. Everything else, he shrugged. Everything else is just survival. Carlos offered a different option. My cousin has a ranch in Sonora. Mexico asks fewer questions about such things. You could work the horses, build a life. They discussed it late into the night. California meant starting over among strangers, but remaining in American territory. Mexico meant exile, but perhaps more freedom. Neither option was perfect. Both meant leaving everything familiar behind. I've already left everything behind, Nora pointed out. The moment I chose to stay in that cave with you. This is just geography. In the end, Taza's health made the decision. He needed at least another month before he could travel far. Carlos sent word to his cousin, and they settled in to wait. Those weeks were the happiest Nora had known. Simple days of quiet work. She helped Carlos with pelts while Taza carved wood when his hands were steady enough. Evenings by the fire, sharing stories and dreams. Nights holding each other. Careful of his healing wound, but finding ways to express their love. One afternoon, as she watched Taza working with one of Carlos's horses, his movements still careful but gaining confidence, she felt a flutter in her belly, just a butterfly touch. But she knew. A woman knows. That night, after Carlos had retired, she told him, I'm carrying your child. Taza went absolutely still. You're certain? As certain as a woman can be this early. She watched his face anxiously. Are you angry? I know this makes everything harder. He silenced her with a kiss so tender it brought tears to her eyes. Angry? Nora, you've given me everything. Life, love, purpose. And now a child? His voice broke. I don't have words for what I feel. Happiness? She suggested hopefully. Joy, terror, wonder. He placed his hand carefully on her still flat stomach. My child will have your courage, your fire, and your strength, your good heart. Our child will be caught between worlds, just as I was. No. She covered his hand with hers. Our child will belong to both worlds. We'll make sure of it. They told Carlos the next morning. The old man smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. New life is always blessing, even when it comes in difficult times. He studied them shrewdly. This changes things. The journey to Sonora, it's hard, perhaps too hard for a woman with child. I'm strong, Nora insisted. Say, but why risk it? My cousin, he can come here instead. Bring what you need. You stay until the baby comes, then decide. It was sensible advice, though Nora chafed at more delay. She wanted to be settled, to nest, to prepare for this child. But Taza's wound still pained him, and her own body was beginning to change in small ways. Patience, she told herself. They'd waited this long. A week later, she woke to find Taza sitting by the window, watching the sunrise paint the desert in shades of gold. What are you thinking? She asked, joining him. About my mother, wondering if she felt what you feel, if she wanted me the way you want this child. I'm sure she did. Then how could she leave? Nora thought carefully before answering. Maybe loving you meant knowing she couldn't give you what you needed. Maybe staying would have destroyed her, and that destruction would have hurt you worse than her leaving. You wouldn't leave, not even if the whole world stood against us. No, she agreed. But I'm not her. We each love in our own way, with our own limits. She took his hand. What matters is that we choose each other, every day. That's our promise. He turned from the window to study her face. When did you become so wise? When I fell in love with a complicated man. She smiled. You've taught me that nothing about love is simple, but that doesn't make it less real. That evening, as they sat outside watching the stars emerge, Nora felt the flutter again, stronger this time. She placed Taza's hand where he could feel it too. Our child moves, she whispered. His eyes widened with wonder. They sat in silence, connected by touch and hope and the small life growing between them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Morrison's hatred still festered somewhere. The world still wouldn't accept them. The journey to safety was far from over. But tonight, they had this, a child quickening, love deepening, hope stubborn as desert flowers after rain. It was, Nora thought, more than enough foundation on which to build a life, an unconventional life. Perhaps a difficult one. Certainly, but theirs, wholly and completely theirs. And, in the end, wasn't that all anyone could ask for? The first light of dawn crept through the cabin window, touching Taza's face with golden fingers. He lay still, not wanting to wake Nora, who slept curled against his side. Her hand rested protectively over her growing belly, and he covered it gently with his own, marveling at the life they'd created. 6 months had passed since that desperate flight from Canyon Pass, 6 months of healing, hoping, building a fragile peace in this hidden corner of the world. But peace, Taza knew, was always temporary for people like them. He'd felt it in his bones all week, the coming change, the way the horses stirred restlessly, the unusual silence of the desert birds, and now, this dawn that felt too much like an ending. Moving carefully to avoid jarring his still tender shoulder, he slipped from the bed and dressed silently. Outside, the desert was waking. A roadrunner darted between the mesquite bushes. Somewhere a coyote sang its morning prayer. You're leaving. He turned to find Nora in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her red hair wild from sleep. Not a question in her voice, just quiet understanding. I have to scout the trail to Sonora, he said. Carlos's cousin sent word. The ranch is ready for us, but I need to make sure the way is safe. That's not why you're leaving. She stepped closer, searching his face. You think someone's coming, Morrison? He couldn't lie to her, had never been able to. Maybe there've been signs. Riders asking questions in the nearest town. Carlos heard talk. Then we leave together. Now, you're 7 months along. Nora, the trail is hard, dangerous. More dangerous than staying here if Morrison finds us? She lifted her chin in that stubborn way he'd grown to love. I won't let you face him alone. Not again. And I won't risk you and our child. He caught her shoulders gently. Please, trust me. Let me scout ahead. Make sure it's clear. 3 days. No more. Taza, I'm not abandoning you. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her in. I'm trying to protect you the only way I know how. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, 2 days. If you're not back in 2 days, I'm coming after you. Nora, 2 days. Her green eyes blazed. That's my offer. Take it or I saddle up right now and come with you. He knew that look, knew she meant it. 2 days, he agreed. They went inside, where she helped him pack ammunition, dried meat, water. Her movements were efficient, but her hands trembled slightly. At the door, she stopped him. Wait. She disappeared into the cabin, returning with something wrapped in leather. Take this. Inside was a necklace, a simple stone on a leather cord, but he recognized it immediately. Apache turquoise, the kind his grandmother had worn. Where did you get this? Carlos helped me trade for it. I was saving it for after our child was born, but she fastened it around his neck. Something to remember you have a home to come back to. He kissed her then, pouring everything he couldn't say into it. When they parted, her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. His brave Irish woman never cried where he could see. 2 days, she reminded him. 2 days, he promised. The trail stretched before him, winding through canyon and desert. His mount was steady, one of Carlos's best horses, but Taza couldn't shake the feeling of wrongness. The land was too quiet, as if holding its breath. By midday, he'd found the first sign, horse tracks, fresher than they should be. 3 riders, maybe 4, moving with purpose. Not Apache, not Mexican. The shoes were American-made. He followed carefully, every sense alert. The tracks led toward Skeleton Ridge, a maze of rocks and dry washes perfect for ambush. If he were setting a trap, that's where he'd do it. But when he finally spotted them, they weren't waiting in ambush. They were making camp in a sheltered canyon, confident and unhurried. 4 men, just as he'd thought. And yes, Morrison was among them, his pale hair visible even from a distance. Taza ground-tied his horse and crept closer on foot, using every skill his grandmother had taught him, close enough to hear their voices carry on the still air. Sure, he'll come this way, one man was saying. He'll come. Morrison replied, Man like that, he can't help himself. Thinks he's protecting his whore by leading us off. Noble savage and all that. Still don't see why we don't just hit the cabin. Carlos is old, won't put up much fight. Because I want him to see it coming. Morrison's voice held a cold satisfaction. Want him to know he failed. Besides, the woman's no good to me dead. Not after what she cost me. She'll pay in other ways. Bile rose in Taza's throat. He'd been right. This was a trap. But not the kind he'd expected. Morrison didn't just want him dead. He wanted Nora alive. Wanted to... No, that would never happen. Not while Taza drew breath. He began to ease back. Mind racing. 4 men, well armed, expecting him. He could take maybe 2 before they got him. Not enough. He needed... The click of a hammer cocking froze him. Well. A 5th man stepped from behind a boulder, rifle aimed at Taza's chest. Look what we caught! The noble savage himself! Morrison appeared moments later, the others flanking him. His smile was triumphant. Ugly. Taza, Red Hawk, you led us quite a chase, but I knew you'd come. Your kind are so predictable. He gestured to his men. Tie him up, gently now. I want him healthy enough to watch. They bound his hands, took his weapons. Taza didn't fight. Not yet. He needed to know their plan. Find the weak point. You're wondering how I found you, Morrison said conversationally. Wasn't hard. That old drunk Dobbs you left in Miguel's cellar? He was very helpful once he sobered up. Told us all about Carlos and his cabin. If you've hurt Carlos, the old Mex, he's fine. For now. Morrison squatted beside him. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to write a note to your squaw. Tell her you need her. You're hurt, whatever it takes to get her here. Then we'll wait. No. Morrison backhanded him casually. That wasn't a request. See, I've had months to think about what you two cost me. My reputation, my standing. Did you know they laughed at me? Me, Samuel Morrison, laughed at because some Irish slut chose a half-breed over me. He stood, pacing. But I'm a patient man. Justice takes time to do right. You'll watch what happens to her. Watch until you beg me to kill you. Then, when you're broken, when she's broken, maybe I'll be merciful. She won't come. She's too smart for that. No? Not even for this? Morrison pulled something from his pocket, the turquoise necklace. Cord snapped. He must have grabbed it during the scuffle. Along with a note in your hand saying you're dying. Oh, she'll come. Love makes fools of everyone. They made camp for the night, confident in their victory. Taza tested his bonds whenever they weren't looking, working at the knots. The rope was new, tight, but there, a slight give where they'd been careless. He had to get free, had to warn Nora. 2 days, she'd said. He had until dawn tomorrow before she'd start looking for him. Maybe if... Stop planning, Morrison said from across the fire. I know what you're thinking, but even if you got loose, where would you go? We'd catch you before you reached the cabin. Or maybe we'd just go there directly, save time. What happened to you? Taza asked quietly. What turns a man into this? Morrison's face darkened. You happened. Your kind. Taking what isn't yours. Corrupting decent women. He leaned forward. My mother ran off with a Mexican when I was 12. Left me and my father for some greaser who played guitar. You're all the same, stealing what belongs to better men. And there it was. Taza thought, the old wound that festered, that turned hurt into hate. He almost pitied Morrison. Almost. Nora doesn't belong to anyone but herself, he said. We'll see about that. The night crawled by. Taza dozed fitfully, still working at his bonds whenever possible. Near dawn, the rope finally gave enough for him to slip one hand free. He waited, patient as a hunting cat, for his chance. It came when the guard dozed off, lulled by the pre-dawn quiet. Taza moved like smoke, freeing his other hand, reaching for the guard's knife. I wouldn't. Morrison stood by the horses, pistol drawn. He'd never been asleep at all. Nice try, but I told you, I'm patient. Been watching you work those knots for hours. He called to his men. Tie him to that wagon wheel, tight this time. As they secured him, Morrison wrote the note himself. Don't worry. I'll make it convincing. Your woman will come running to save you. He smiled coldly. Too bad you won't be able to warn her it's a trap. The sun rose like Judgment Day. Taza pulled against the bonds until his wrists bled, but the wheel was solid oak. The ropes expertly tied. In a few hours, Nora would start wondering. By afternoon, she'd be looking for him, and when she found the note, please, he said, hating himself for begging but desperate enough to try. Do what you want of me, but leave her alone. She's carrying a child. Your mongrel whelp? Morrison laughed. Even better. 2 abominations removed from the world. That's when Taza heard it, the sharp whistle of a hawk. But no hawk, he realized. Carlos, the old hunter had followed, was somewhere in the rocks above. Morrison heard it too, frowning. What was... The shot came from the ridge, taking the nearest guard in the shoulder. Then chaos erupted. More shots from different positions. Carlos hadn't come alone. Cover! Morrison shouted, diving behind rocks. In the confusion, someone cut Taza's bonds. A young Mexican rider he didn't recognize. Carlos sent us, the boy said, pressing a pistol into Taza's hands. 5 of us. You shoot. We finish this. The battle was brief but vicious. Morrison's men, caught in crossfire, didn't last long. Soon only Morrison remained, crouched behind a boulder, cursing. It's over, "Morrison," Taza called. "Throw out your gun." "Never." Morrison broke cover, shooting wildly. Taza's return fire caught him in the chest, spinning him around. He fell hard, gun tumbling from nerveless fingers. Taza approached carefully, but Morrison was done. Blood bubbled from his lips as he glared up with fading eyes. "Should have killed you both that first day." "Yes," Taza agreed quietly. "You should have." Morrison died with hate in his eyes, taking his poisoned dreams of vengeance with him. Carlos appeared as Taza stood, the old man moving carefully down the slope. "Sorry we were almost late. Took time to gather the boys." "How did you know?" "Your woman, she had a feeling, sent me to watch your back trail." Carlos smiled. "Smart one, that you should listen to her more." They buried Morrison and his men in unmarked graves, then rode hard for the cabin. Taza's heart hammered the whole way. What if more men had circled back? What if... But Nora was there, standing in the doorway as they approached, one hand on her belly, and relief flooding her face. She met him halfway, catching him as he practically fell from the saddle into her arms. 2 days, she said against his chest. "I gave you 2 days. I know, I'm sorry, She silenced him with a kiss that tasted of tears and joy. "You came back, that's all that matters." Later, after he'd told her everything, after Carlos and his men had been fed and thanked, they stood by the same window where they'd watched so many sunrises. "It's really over?" she asked. "Morrison's gone." "He's gone. That part of our past is finished. And our future." He turned her to face him, hands gentle on her shoulders. "Carlos's cousin expects us next month. The baby will be born in Mexico. Safe. We'll have that ranch, those horses, that life we dreamed of. Together. Always together." She smiled. And in that moment, he saw their whole future, the child learning to ride before walking, speaking both Apache and English. Bridging worlds, more children perhaps, if they were blessed, a small ranch becoming home. Hard work and simple pleasures. Love defying all who'd say it couldn't last. "Then let's begin," Nora said, taking his hand and placing it over their child. "Our real life starts now." As the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in shades of hope, Taza held his family close. They'd walked through fire and flood to get here, faced down death and hate and the weight of 2 worlds trying to tear them apart. But they'd survived. More than survived. They'd chosen each other, again and again, until that choice became as natural as breathing. The trail to Mexico would be long. The life waiting there wouldn't be easy, but they'd travel it together. And that made all the difference. In the end, love had been stronger than hate, hope fiercer than fear, and in the wild heart of the frontier, sometimes that was the greatest miracle of all. Thank you for joining us around the Wild West Campfire for this tale of love and survival against all odds. We'd love to know where you're listening from, whether it's from a bustling city or somewhere out in the wide open spaces. Please subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more stories of the American frontier, and share your thoughts about Nora and Taza's journey in the comments below. Until next time, partners, keep that campfire burning and those stories alive.